With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown. Our top stories: St. Kitts and Nevis strengthens international partnerships and champions regional climate action. Minister Duggins criticized over absence of St. Kitts and Nevis in 2024 ICC Men's T20 World Cup. ECCB Connects highlights regional financial initiatives in ECCU, streamlining banking and protecting consumers. Rubio, while in Guyana, issues clear warning to Venezuela. OECS projects leave lasting impact on marine pollution and climate resilience. Internationally, Gaza's healthcare system on the brink as blood shortage worsens death toll. Now, the details. St. Kitts and Nevis has emerged as a prominent voice in regional and international sustainability and climate resilience discussions. The recent hosting of the Green Climate Fund GCF Regional Dialogue from March 17th to 20th at the St. Kitts Marriott Resort under the theme Towards a Resilient Caribbean Advancing Regional Solutions for Climate Action, Sustainable Growth and Inclusive Development underscores this growing leadership. Minister of Environment and Climate Action, the Honorable Dr. Joyle Clark, emphasized the significance of this event.
We have become a buzz point, not just for tourism, but for conversations on sustainability, climate resilience, and that's because of our demonstration of our ambition and our intentions to transition.
The GCF Regional Dialogue brought together regional leaders, international partners, and key stakeholders to address critical climate challenges and explore collaborative solutions. A significant highlight of the event was the participation of Prime Minister Motley of Barbados, a global champion for small island developing states. Dr. Clark noted that Prime Minister Motley delivered
a very inspired call for action that as a region we needed to work towards a debt for climate swap, logistics and transportation, interregional logistics and transportation, and an energy framework for cooperation in the Caribbean.
This call for regional cooperation was echoed throughout the conference, emphasizing the need for collective action to address shared climate vulnerabilities. The dialogue also facilitated crucial discussions on energy transition and developing a regional framework for energy cooperation. Minister Maynard hosted a meeting that brought together all regional partners, including OECS, CARICOM, CDF, CDB, and ECCB, to discuss a green print for energy transition. Dr. Clark highlighted the significance of this meeting.
The Green Climate Fund regional director said that was the first time she saw every single regional partner, OECS, CARICOM, CDF, CDB, ECCB, every 5 Cs, everybody was in that room, a room of 20, with our minister talking about a regional framework for energy.
This framework ensures that progress on renewable energy and geothermal initiatives continues regardless of administrative shifts, fostering long-term sustainability. While St. Kitts and Nevis has historically accessed the least funding from GCF among Caribbean nations, the Federation is actively working to increase its access to climate finance. Dr. Clark emphasized the importance of proactive engagement and lobbying.
You cannot stay in St. Kitts and Nevis and expect the world to say, send some money to St. Kitts and Nevis.
St. Kitts and Nevis is positioning itself to secure greater financial support for its climate resilience initiatives by demonstrating a commitment to sustainability, implementing sound policies, and fostering collaboration.
As we shift our behaviors, conferences and engaging international partners in this way will become part and parcel. And I look forward to the day when we can hold a big UN climate conference. We may not have the space, but that's a hope, and it's about that accelerated ambition.
Sports Minister Samuel Duggins is facing renewed criticism over the government's decision not to bid for matches in the 2024 ICC Men's T20 World Cup held across the Caribbean and the United States as the economic impact data for the event is released. St. Kitts and Nevis, along with several other territories, did not host any games during the tournament, leading to widespread frustration among local fans. Dr. Kishar Shallow, president of Cricket West Indies, highlighted the significant economic benefits enjoyed by the host territories. In a statement, he shared that these regions saw over $1 billion in economic returns for the event, calling it a transformative moment for our region. Shallow emphasized that the tournament not only reinforced the Caribbean status as the heartbeat of world cricket, but also positioned as a hub for economic growth, tourism, and global investment.
The independent economic impact assessment conducted by the International Cricket Council, ICC, and Nelson Sports paints compelling picture. This World Cup injected an astonishing $1.66 billion into the economies of the host nations, directly benefiting businesses, workers, and communities across the Caribbean. In an era where economic resilience is more critical than ever, this event serves as a beacon of possibility, showcasing the power of sport, the power of cricket to drive tangible and lasting economic progress.
According to Shallow, the territories that hosted the games, such as Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Antigua and Barbuda, saw the most significant economic impact.
What we can achieve when we work together, my Caribbean people. The impact of this World Cup was felt in every corner of our region, with millions of dollars flowing into key economic sectors, generating employment and fueling small businesses. Each host territory within our region did exceedingly well. While it is obvious that some countries outperformed the other, the numbers are nothing short of remarkable, and every single country, all of these 6 countries in the Caribbean, must be proud. Barbados led the way, generating $426.4 million in economic impact. Second to Barbados was St. Vincent and the Grenadines, generating a staggering $224.8 million. And of course, St. Lucia performed exceedingly well with a magnificent $132.5 million in economic impact. Antigua and Barbuda's commendable record stood at $114 million, and Guyana and Trinidad $76.7 million and $68.9 million respectively.
As these achievements are celebrated across host nations, local politicians are questioning the decision not to include St. Kitts and Nevis. Azard Gums, deputy leader of the People's Action Movement, has criticized Sports Minister Samuel Duggins for the country's absence from the tournament.
The fact that we're able to see from our neighbors the returns for hosting the World Cup cricket, and our Minister of Sports not wanting to even bid for the hosting of the World Cup here in St. Kitts and Nevis shows the short-sightedness of the Minister of Sports, shows his lack of innovation, creativity, and his lack to do anything to place St. Kitts and Nevis in the eyes of the international arena.
Dr. Shallow further emphasized the tangible benefits for the region.
These figures are not just statistics. They represent real income for families, real opportunities for entrepreneurs, and real investments in our tourism infrastructure. Hotels, restaurants, transportation services, retail outlets, and cultural industries all reap substantial benefits from the influx of teams, cricket fans, international media, and corporate partners.
Meanwhile, Gums raised concern that the government has failed to recognize the potential impact of sports tourism on the local economy.
The trickle-down effect, hosting the games would have been a boost to many persons in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. The advertisement when it comes to the national, international recognition of St. Kitts and Nevis, when it comes to the business owners in St. Kitts and Nevis, when you look at the hotel industry, when you look at the taxi, because persons are going to need transportation when they come in. When you look at the restaurants, because persons are going to come to St. Kitts and Nevis, they're going to want to wine and dine and taste our cuisines. So it is the short-sightedness of Duggins and this administration. And that is why we are saying that a People's Action Movement-led administration is best for St. Kitts and Nevis.
Across the 6 host territories, more than 380,000 fans attended the games, a significant portion of whom were international visitors, many of whom were experiencing the Caribbean for the first time.
The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, ECCB, recently concluded Season 27 of ECCB Connects, featuring a segment titled ECCB in Action, which recapped the bank's significant programs and projects during the first quarter of 2025. A key focus was the ECCB's 6 external priorities for the year.
Ease of opening a bank account, establishment of the Office of Financial Conduct and Inclusion, establishment of the Eastern Caribbean Financial Standards Board, deposit insurance, development of a financial inclusion strategy, and establishment of a regional regulator for citizenship by investment programs in the ECCU.
The ECCB prioritizes the ease of opening bank accounts, aiming for a full rollout of basic bank accounts by licensed financial institutions, LFIs, in April 2025. In preparation, LFIs have been reviewing their internal systems, and the ECCB has been collaborating with the Ease of Opening Accounts Working Group to streamline the process. Levia Burton-Mark, Deputy Director in the Financial Sector Supervision Department, explained,
Since then, we've had some consultative meetings with our licensed financial institutions, and the purpose of this meeting was to engage and interact with the LFIs to get an understanding on the state of preparedness for the introduction of the basic bank account. It was also an opportunity to highlight any concerns they may have, as well as take on board any recommendations they may have as it relates to the rollout of the basic bank account, which we anticipate to happen in April 2025.
The ECCB plans to extend these consultations with a town hall meeting for the general public. To further assist with the ease of account opening process, the ECCB has approved simplified due diligence standards for institutions licensed to conduct banking business under the Banking Act of 2015.
The purpose of those standards is to ensure that there is consistency as it relates to due diligence measures, which is instituted by our licensed financial institutions. So what does that mean for our citizens? It means going from one financial institution to the next, there is consistency as it relates to the information that is required of you, particularly where low risk has been identified. This further extends to all our member jurisdictions. So if you're moving from St. Lucia, for instance, to Antigua and Barbuda, the application of simplified due diligence measures would be consistent across the board. And of course, we know that this would assist in the ease of doing business for our citizens.
Work on establishing the Office of Financial Conduct and Inclusion, OFCI, in the ECCU is also advancing. The office will regulate matters relating to financial consumer protection and business conduct for financial institutions licensed under the Banking Act. Chief Director of Policy Tracy Polius stated the necessity for the OFCI.
We've been receiving a number of complaints from stakeholders across the currency union about engagements with financial institutions. But more so, we realize the methods of delivery of financial services are changing. There is an increased use of information technology to deliver financial services, and with that comes certain risks such as fraud and scams, and we want to be able to protect customers and stakeholders from the threats of such threats and risk. Additionally, the financial sector is becoming more concentrated. Our banks are becoming larger, and with these movements come increased market power, and we want to ensure that stakeholders are on a more balanced footing in terms of the interaction with the financial sector.
The ECCB collaborated with stakeholders to finalize the amended Banking Act and begin consultations across the ECCU.
To date, we have drafted the legislation to support the establishment of the Office for Financial Conduct and Inclusion, and that legislation is established as a section in the Banking Act. It's called the Banking Amendment Bill, and that bill is now before our member countries, the Attorneys General's Chambers, and the Office of the Chief Parliamentary Consuls for review and eventual passage. We are also at present in the process of conducting sensitization meetings across the currency union. We just concluded about 2 weeks ago the sensitization missions in St. Kitts and Nevis, and we are about to visit Antigua and Barbuda to have sensitization meetings with stakeholders in Antigua and Barbuda.
The OFCI is expected to be operational in the last quarter of 2025, pending legislative passage by all ECCU governments by September 2025. In regional news, Rubio, while in Guyana, issues clear warning to Venezuela. Guyana news source has that report.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio issued a strong warning to Venezuela during his visit to Guyana that if that country were to ever attack Guyana or ExxonMobil's assets offshore Guyana, there will be serious consequences for Venezuela that will begin with a very bad day.
It would be a very bad day for the Venezuelan regime if they were to attack Guyana or attack ExxonMobil or anything like it. It would be a very bad day, a very bad week for them. and it would not end well for them.
Secretary Rubio said the U.S. remains a partner of Guyana and will stand by Guyana's side, noting that the U.S. government will not allow any illegitimate threats of a territorial claim by Venezuela against Guyana.
I'm not going to get into details of what we'll do. We're not big on those kinds of threats. I think everybody understands, and I want it to be clear. We've made this clear repeatedly. I think the U.S. Navy today is making it clear and demonstrating our ability to. We have a big Navy, and it can get almost anywhere. It can get anywhere in the world. We have commitments that exist today with Guyana. We want to build on those, expand on those, and we'll leave it for the appropriate time. But suffice it to say that if that regime were to do something such as that, it would be a very bad move. It would be a big mistake.
Hours before Mr. Rubio touched down in Guyana, the U.S. Embassy and the Guyana Defense Force announced that the U.S. Navy and the Guyana Coast Guard were conducting joint exercises offshore Guyana and within Guyana's exclusive economic zone. That move comes 2 weeks after a Venezuelan Navy vessel made an incursion in Guyana's waters and sailed to the various oil ships operating in Guyana to question the captains via radio about their presence in those areas. Guyana had alerted the U.S. and the international community to that latest act of aggression and the ongoing threats from Venezuela. The U.S. Secretary of State was one of the first to condemn the actions of the Venezuelan government. Today, he assured Guyana that the U.S. has its back.
I said this during my time as a senator, and I have full confidence in saying it now as the Secretary of State. There will be consequences for adventurism. There will be consequences for aggressive actions. And that's why our partnership in that regard will be important. That is not what we want to be a feature of our relationship. But it is a necessity of our relationship because you have a very difficult challenge on your hands with a dictator that's making illegitimate territorial claims. And so you have our full commitment and support.
The government of Guyana and the U.S. government signed a memorandum of understanding that focuses heavily on security, trade, and other related matters. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced that the U.S. government will be working with Guyana on illegal immigration, with a view to keep criminals out of the two countries. He said the policy would form part of a broader security architecture, which will see information sharing being a top priority.
So I think if we have information that someone has entered your country who has bad intentions, we want to be able to share that with your government because you don't want that. You don't want those, if we have information on a Trinidad gang member from Venezuela, we want to make sure that we have collaboration and we're sharing that information.
Rubio was in Guyana as part of a Caribbean tour to advance the U.S. policy in the region. He noted that Guyana is transitioning from being a country where people primarily immigrated to one where immigration may become more prominent. He said the U.S. is working to support the shift. In addition, he said the country's growing economy, labor needs, and geography may make it easier for unsuspecting people to come in.
We want to prevent these problems from happening. So from the perspective of Guyana, which is not a source country of migration to the United States per se, illegal migration, but it is a country that receives. Unfortunately, you're getting a lot of people. And not everybody that comes here, most people are probably here to work hard and so forth, but not everyone.
The U.S. is involved in a series of migration governance needs assessments, including one for Guyana, to understand the challenges and opportunities in the region's migration systems. The U.S. is also seeking to foster regional unity and shared goals in migration management.
OECS projects leave lasting impact on marine pollution and climate resilience. DPS St. Lucia has that story.
The Building Resilience in the Eastern Caribbean through reduction in marine litter remnant project was initiated with the primary objective of strengthening policies and legislation aimed at effectively reducing and managing waste within the region. This project placed a strong emphasis on raising awareness about the critical issues associated with marine litter, in particular plastic waste, which poses significant threats to marine ecosystems and coastal communities. Simultaneously, the Recycle OECS initiative developed a comprehensive model for sustainable management of recyclable waste. This model incorporates best practices and innovative strategies to enhance recycling processes and ensure that recyclable materials are effectively processed, thereby minimizing overall waste in landfills and protecting the environment. The combination of these two efforts is being highlighted during an engaging two-day closeout meeting for both projects.
The interconnected challenges of terrestrial and marine pollution, particularly from plastics, threaten both land-based resources and ocean ecosystems, underscoring the need to create a more holistic and sustainable approach to economic development through green and blue economy principles. In alignment with this interconnected approach, the Commission and beneficiary member states were able to conceptualize, design, and leverage 2 separate project initiatives towards one strategic goal and integrated program.
Stakeholders will conduct a thorough examination of the lessons learned during the project's implementation. This meeting will also serve as a celebration of the achievements realized in Dominica, Grenada, and St. Lucia.
These projects now serve as stepping stone for creating a more circular economy where waste is not just discarded, but viewed as valuable resource. By promoting waste reduction, waste recovery, and the adoption of sustainable disposal practices, this initiative has instilled a culture of responsibility and accountability within communities, businesses, and government alike.
The projects were generously supported by the Government of Norway, the French Agency for Development, and the European Union. For the TBS News World, Zane Romulus reported.
We now bring you these international reports.
In Gaza's hospitals, every second counts. Every drop of blood is the difference between life and death. And yet for so many Palestinians, that lifeline is slipping away. Medical teams work tirelessly, but they are running out of the most basic resources needed to save lives. And as Israel's airstrikes continue, the number of wounded keeps climbing. Every day, doctors are forced to watch patients die not just from the severity of the wounds, but from the sheer lack of essential medical supplies, including blood.
We used to provide blood bank services for 300,000 Palestinians, but that number has now doubled while our capacity has drastically declined. At the start of the war, we collected 1,500 blood units per month, but now we barely manage 350. In the beginning of the war, we relied on blood shipments from the West Bank to help cover chronic shortages, but with the crossing closed, nothing is getting through.
With no way to resupply hospitals because of Israel's blockade, medical organizations warn that Gaza's health system is in free fall.
Health partners report that essential medical supplies for managing mass casualty incidents need to be restocked due to a sharp increase in trauma cases and the severity of injuries. WHO says there are fewer than 500 units of blood available when 8,000 are needed every month.
Even those who want to help face their own struggle. Severe food and water shortages have left Gaza's population weak, dehydrated, and malnourished. Blood donors are disappearing not because they do not care, but because they simply do not have the strength.
I know blood supplies are critically low in Gaza's hospitals, but I hesitated to donate today due to the severe shortage of food. But knowing that so many people desperately need blood, I realized I couldn't stand by. I had to help.
With no access to new medical supplies and no ceasefire in sight, doctors fear the worst is yet to come.
In this war, it's not just bombs and bullets that they are killing people. It's the slow suffocation of a healthcare system denied the resources to function. And with every passing day without access to life-saving supplies, more lives are slipping away. Tariq Abazoum, Al Jazeera, Deir al-Balah, Palestine.
Well, this was originally supposed to be a private tour by Usha Vance, the wife of the Vice President. With the relations between the US and the Danish territory souring, there were warnings of protests. Then it emerged that J.D. Vance was coming here together with a group of US diplomats, despite the fact the Greenland government hadn't actually invited them. Well, they've arrived, but the trip is now being held in a remote US base hundreds of miles from the capital here, Nuuk, in Greenland. And of course, earlier on today, Greenland declared a new coalition government with a promise of unity and national unity. Andrew Harding reports.
It is an exquisite wilderness. Greenland, an ice-smothered island now claimed entirely and aggressively by the United States. In the capital Nuuk this morning, the first hints of spring, ice breaking. And in the harbour, Carl Peter, preparing to go out fishing for halibut with his colleagues. If, that is, they can clear a path to the sea. I asked him about America's president.
I don't feel safe. I'm worried. Trump is trying to control the country.
What do you want to happen?
I want Greenland to control its own fate.
But will an assertive America let that happen? Today, a high-level US delegation arrived pointedly in Greenland. The Vice President, J.D. Vance, and his wife Usha visiting this remote American military base in the far north, arguing that vital US security concerns are at stake here. But Greenland's politicians are unimpressed. This afternoon, they were celebrating the formation of a new coalition government to run the island. This is a small community with an emphasis on respect and dialogue. American bullying doesn't go down well here.
All Greenlandic people have already shouted out to the world that the Greenlandic people is the one who's going to decide how the future is going to be.
And not as an American state?
Not as an American state.
The strength of local feeling explains these images. American planes landed in Nuuk this week in preparation for a much more public visit by J.D. Vance's wife, Usha. But they had to cancel for fear of local protests. Greenlanders have scored a small victory today, embarrassing the White House into cancelling its plans for a meet-the-public royal tour kind of visit here. But the tug of war over this vast island is really only just beginning, and there are concerns that the Americans may start to ramp up the pressure. What's clear is that Greenland's days as a quiet, beautiful backwater are over. Andrew Harding, BBC News, Nuuk.
So what happens now in terms of the relations between these two countries? What next for the US and Greenland?
It's a genuinely bewildering situation, isn't it? The Danish government's clearly hoping that it can negotiate its way out of this, that the Americans are not really serious about these kind of ultimatums they seem to be delivering. What's odd is that you have J.D. Vance here in Greenland talking about the needs for this island for security purposes. The Danes and the Americans already have a security deal that goes back 74 years. The Americans can build and install as many submarine bases, as many military bases as they like. So what's this really about? Well, the fact is the Greenland government itself is now moving towards independence from Denmark. It wants to be standing on its own 2 feet. It wants very good relations with America, trading relations. This is a prospering island that's really coming up in the world. So everything could be done, but not at the pace that Donald Trump seems to want it, and not with the kind of bullying tone that is so antithetical to the way Greenlanders are. They want a peaceful process, not this kind of ultimatum.
The question really is, what were they hoping to achieve with this visit? Well, one thing that is clear is that many Greenlanders are preferring right now to focus on moving closer to independence than to the United States.
In South Sudan's capital Juba, refreshment seller Victoria Kojang is worried that her country could be about to slide back into violence. A peace deal following a 5-year civil war in the world's youngest nation is being threatened by a growing rift between President Salva Kiir and his longtime rival, First Vice President Riek Machar.
I strongly oppose war. I want to protect myself and my family. I pray day and night. I don't want war.
Machar was placed under house arrest on Wednesday night. His party said that effectively voided the 2018 peace deal that brought Kiir and Machar into a fragile power-sharing government. The peace deal had ended a conflict largely fought along ethnic lines, and in which hundreds of thousands of people died. That's after South Sudan in 2011 won independence from Sudan, currently ravaged by its own civil war. South Sudan is now standing at a crossroads, says Chair of the Human Rights Commission in South Sudan, Yasmin Suka.
And its leadership can decide, to honor the revitalized peace agreement and, in fact, to build on the gains of the last 7 years. But they can also, if they choose not to do so, to plunge South Sudan back into another conflict.
The latest crisis was triggered by a recent clash between an ethnic militia, the White Army, and South Sudan's military in a northeastern town. Machar's party denies government accusations that it backs the White Army, which it fought alongside in the civil war. In response to the fighting, Kiir's forces rounded up several of Machar's senior allies. There have since been clashes between forces loyal to the two men outside Juba and elsewhere. On Friday, Kenya said it was sending former Prime Minister Raila Odinga to try and defuse the situation. Britain, meanwhile, advised all its nationals to leave the country. South Sudan's government spokesperson did not respond to requests for comment on Machar's detention or on Odinga's appointment.
President Trump's 25% car tariff has shaken markets, but how much economic damage will it do? This is Macro Matters, and we're talking tariffs. President Trump took aim at trading partners around the world this week with a 25% duty on all imported cars and car parts, and that has wiped billions of dollars off the shares of European and Asian car makers. The German Big Three, BMW, Mercedes and Volkswagen, between them account for nearly 3/4 of Europe's car exports to the US, so this alone could wipe out a lot of the recent optimism around a German recovery. Well, Holger Schmeiding is chief economist at Berenberg. Holger, how serious is this tariff for the German economy?
It is, of course, a serious threat to the German economy. After all, producing cars is one of the things that Germany tends to be pretty good at, or at least was very good at until recently. Having said that, many German car manufacturers actually are producing in Mexico. Some are producing in the US. So the impact may not be quite as big as you may suggest if you just look at how many cars with a German label are driving in the US. We calculate that these tariffs will reduce German growth by about 0.2 percentage points over the course of this year, which is significant for an economy which at the moment is barely growing at all.
How are you expecting the big car makers to react here? Are there other markets they might target, or will they, as you say, move more production to North America?
They will probably move a bit more production to North America, but we need to see how negotiations go. One of the problems at the moment is you don't quite know how to react. Trump says this is non-negotiable, but Trump may say something different after having spoken, for instance, to EU representatives in a little while. So I think at the moment, many companies will be holding back on investment decisions, both at home as well as in the US, Mexico, and Canada. And that, of course, is overall negative. Once we get a clear sentiment, are these 25% car tariffs to stay? To what car parts do they also apply? Because exports of car parts for Germany are almost as important as exports of cars. Once we know that, we will likely see some businesses relocating production into the US. There will also be a few companies sort of moving the other way. But by and large, it will be more going into the US short term than vice versa. It will likely be a drag on German growth. Fortunately, this comes at a time when the German government is adding a domestic stimulus. So probably net between the two things, the German economy will probably still manage to shape up a little later this year.
As you say, Holger, this comes just after a deal to reform Germany's debt brake and increase borrowing, which sparked a wave of market optimism about Germany's recovery. But do tariffs now mean the picture might look a lot less positive this year?
It looks less positive for this year and next year, but it does not look negative. The emphasis is on less, and it still remains positive. This is, after all, in German domestic policy, a sea change. And I would emphasize not just that this means more demand for defense products, more demand for infrastructure investment. It also, by enhancing the infrastructure, will over time raise the supply potential of the country, with the likely result of coalition negotiations being some incentives for people to work more, to work longer, tax incentives to do so. And with some deregulation drive, many German companies will get a benefit from that, stronger supply growth. So net, I would say, of these two things, Trump's trade wars, really bad. German changes, really good. Net, the result so far of the news this year is net positive.
How are you expecting European governments to react, Holger? Are they going to retaliate or attempt to strike a deal with the Trump administration?
Well, both. More precisely, Europe will probably initially wait and see. It will offer to negotiate. It will also wait a bit to hope for feedback from American companies complaining A, about uncertainty, and B, about some of the stuff that they import getting more expensive. Europe will also wait for US consumers saying, oh, we don't like things getting more expensive. So for now, what Europe will do is Europe will threaten serious retaliation, almost like for like. After all, many of the big US tech companies earn a significant share of their global revenues in the European market, and we would have ways to get at them. Because if it comes to services, the US is selling more services to us than vice versa. But we will not initially wield the big stick, we will show the big stick and then negotiate and hope that by the end of the second quarter, we have a deal, hopefully a deal which will be bearable for us, not as good as it was all before Trump, and the deal which then Trump, if he's clever, as of course in a way he is, could sell as, of course, the best deal ever.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were: St. Kitts and Nevis strengthens international partnerships and champions regional climate action. Minister Duggins criticized over absence of St. Kitts and Nevis in 2024 ICC Men's T20 World Cup. ECCB Connects highlights regional financial initiatives in ECCU, streamlining banking and protecting consumers. Rubio, while in Guyana, issues clear warning to Venezuela. OECS projects leave lasting impact on marine pollution and climate resilience. Internationally, Gaza's healthcare system on the brink as blood shortage worsens death toll. Thank you for listening.